Welcome. Tonight, we're spending a quiet, rainy evening deep in the forest, inside a small wooden cabin warmed by a gentle stove. As the rain falls softly against the roof and a lantern glows beside us, there's nothing to do, nowhere to be, just warmth, steady breathing, and the slow rhythm of the night. Settle in comfortably and let the sounds of rain and wood carry you into a peaceful space. The rain had already settled into the night, long before the traveler reached the edge of the forest. It was not a heavy rain, not a storm that demanded attention, just a steady, patient falling of water, soft but constant, like a quiet conversation between the sky and the earth. The path through the trees was narrow and dark, softened by damp soil and scattered leaves. Each step pressed gently into the ground, releasing the faint scent of wet wood and moss. The air felt cool, but not uncomfortable, just cool enough to notice. Somewhere ahead, barely visible through the drifting gray of rainfall, there was a small wooden structure, a cabin, simple, still. Its roof sloped slightly, allowing the rain to slide down in silver sheets. A single window glowed faintly from within. The light was not bright. It flickered gently, as if unsure whether to shine or rest. The traveler approached without hurry. Boots met the wooden steps with a dull, softened sound. The porch creaked quietly under shifting weight. The door, when pushed, opened with a long, tired sigh of wood against wood. Inside, the space was small and dry. The scent of old timber lingered in the air, slightly smoky, slightly sweet. The walls were made of thick wooden planks, uneven in places, each carrying its own lines and knots. A narrow table stood near one wall. A chair rested beside it. In the corner, a modest iron stove radiated a gentle warmth, and beside the stove, hanging from a nail, was a lantern. Its flame trembled softly. The traveler stepped inside and closed the door, muting the forest just slightly. The rain did not disappear. It simply became softer, more distant. A steady tapping against the roof. Shoes were removed slowly, set near the entrance. A coat followed, damp from the rain, placed carefully over the back of the chair. For a moment, there was only stillness. Then a slow exhale. The hands, cool from the walk, extended toward the stove. Not too close, just enough to feel the gradual warmth returning to the fingertips. The heat was mild and steady. It did not rush. It simply existed. The lantern's glow stretched across the wooden floor, revealing faint scratches and worn edges. The light shifted gently with each small movement of flame. Outside, the rain continued, its rhythm. Tap, slide, tap, slide. Now and then, a deeper tone would emerge as water gathered and dropped from the roof's edge. A hollow wooden echo followed. The traveler pulled the chair closer to the stove and sat down. The chair creaked in quiet protest, then accepted the weight. The body settled, shoulders lowered slightly, hands rested more loosely. Breathing found a slower pace. There was nothing else to do. No road to follow tonight. No task waiting to be finished. No conversation to continue. Only the rain, and the small flame, and the faint, occasional murmur of distant thunder, rolling far beyond the trees. It was not sharp thunder. It did not crack or split the sky. It simply rolled, low and wide, like something turning over in its sleep. The traveler listened. At first, the mind wandered outward, not to worries, not to plans, just to noticing the way the rain struck different parts of the roof in slightly different tones. The right side produced a quicker tapping sound. The left side, perhaps weighed down by moss, sounded softer. The chimney created its own rhythm as droplets slid along its side. The stove made a gentle ticking noise as metal adjusted to heat. Small shifts, small expansions, nothing sudden. The lantern hummed faintly. The traveler rubbed hands together once more, and then let them rest in the lap. The room felt smaller now, not confined, just contained, like a wooden shell protecting a single quiet moment in the forest. Time moved differently inside the cabin. Outside, rain fell without measure. Inside, seconds felt longer, wider. The traveler leaned back slightly in the chair, feeling its balance, testing its sturdiness. It held. A slow glance moved around the room. There was a small shelf on the far wall, empty, except for a folded cloth. Beneath the window, a simple bench. The glass pane shimmered with moving droplets, distorting the shadow of tree branches outside. Every so often, wind brushed against the cabin walls, not forcefully, just enough to remind the structure that it stood in open space. The traveler closed their eyes for a moment. The rain grew louder in the absence of sight. It filled the space between thoughts. Tap, tap, slide, drop. Another distant roll of thunder passed, softer than before. The body adjusted slightly in the chair, seeking comfort. One foot shifted forward. The heel rested more firmly on the floor. The shoulders leaned a bit more into the backrest. Warmth from the stove traveled slowly upward through the air. It reached the hands first, then the arms, then the face. The dampness of the earlier walk began to fade. Clothes dried gradually. The room smelled more clearly of wood now, less of rain. There was no clock inside the cabin, no ticking, no counting. Only the steady breathing of someone who had stopped moving. The traveler opened their eyes again and watched the lantern. The flame bent slightly when air moved. It straightened again when the air settled. It danced quietly, but without urgency. A small shadow shifted across the ceiling beams. Outside, a heavier cluster of rain passed overhead. The sound thickened briefly, then returned to its steady pattern. The traveler stood slowly, not out of need, but to stretch. The floorboards responded with gentle creaks beneath careful steps. A hand reached toward the lantern, adjusting its small dial slightly. The flame lowered just a bit. The light became softer. Shadows deepened along the corners of the room. The chair was moved a few inches closer to the stove. Not too close, just enough to feel more warmth on the knees. Sitting again felt easier this time. The body knew the shape of the seat. Now, it did not resist. Outside, the forest remained unseen but present. The faint rustle of leaves, the steady rainfall weaving through branches. Occasionally, the quiet shift of something small moving through undergrowth. Nothing hurried. The traveler's gaze drifted toward the window once more. Rain traced slow paths downward, merging and separating. Each droplet followed gravity without question. Inside the cabin, everything had found its place. The coat drying quietly, the shoes resting near the door, the lantern breathing light, the stove holding warmth. Another low rumble of thunder rolled through the distance, softer than before, as if the sky were settling. The traveler's breathing matched the rhythm of the rain now. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. Thoughts rose briefly, small images of the forest path, the dim outline of trees, the wet earth underfoot, but they dissolved easily, replaced by the present sounds. There was no need to think ahead, no need to look back. Only this small cabin, this wooden chair, this patient rain. The flame flickered once more, then steadied, and the night continued, quietly unfolding around the solitary warmth of the room. The rain softened again after some time. It did not stop. It simply became finer, more like a whisper brushing across the roof than a tapping. The traveler noticed the change without fully lifting their head. The ears adjusted first. The rhythm thinned out, becoming lighter and more spaced. With the lighter rain, other sounds slowly emerged. Water dripping from the eaves outside, a faint trickle forming somewhere near the base of the cabin, the distant sway of tall trees shifting against one another. The stove gave a low, steady hum. Its warmth was consistent now, spreading evenly through the small space. The air inside felt balanced, not too warm, not too cool. The traveler shifted one hand closer to the stove and turned the palm upward. Heat gathered there, gently, like a resting weight. The lantern's light had grown dimmer after the adjustment. The room now existed in deeper amber tones. Edges were softer, corners blurred slightly. A slow breath moved through the traveler's chest. The body felt heavier in the chair, not in discomfort, just settled. One foot slid forward a few inches, the other followed. The legs stretched out, boots absent, toes flexing lightly against wool socks. The cabin responded to stillness with its own quiet language. Wood expanded and contracted in small, almost musical clicks. The roof beams held firm above, carrying the faint pattern of rain without complaint. Outside, the clouds shifted slightly. The thunder had grown distant now. Only the rain remained, steady and patient. The traveler's eyes drifted toward the small window again. The glass was blurred with droplets, but the darkness beyond seemed lighter than before. Not bright, just softened. The forest shapes were no longer deep shadows, but gentle outlines. The rain made narrow rivers down the pane. Each line met another, merging briefly before separating again. The traveler leaned back further in the chair. The wooden backrest pressed evenly along the spine. The warmth from the stove reached the knees and hands fully now. The earlier chill had disappeared completely. A slow blink. Another. The mind wandered briefly to the journey that led here. The quiet path. The damp leaves. The steady steps. But the memory did not stay long. It dissolved easily into the present warmth. The traveler reached forward and placed one more small piece of wood into the stove. The door opened with a soft metallic scrape. A small burst of brighter orange light appeared inside. Then the door closed again. The stove responded with a faint crackle. The flame within adjusted, settled, and resumed its steady glow. The action was simple, slow, without urgency. Returning to the chair felt natural. The traveler folded hands loosely over the stomach, this time, instead of extending them forward. The warmth had already filled the room enough. Outside, the rain thinned further. Now it sounded like individual droplets, more than a sheet. Each one distinct. Drop, pause, drop, drop. Somewhere beyond the cabin, water gathered in a shallow dip in the forest floor. A soft pooling sound formed, almost like a distant stream. The wind eased. The trees no longer brushed against one another. They stood tall and quiet, allowing the rain to fall straight down. The traveler's breathing grew slower, still. Inhale through the nose, a brief stillness. Exhale through parted lips. The lantern flickered again, reacting to a slight shift in air as the stove's warmth moved upward. Shadows on the ceiling beams drifted lazily. Time continued, without markers. The traveler leaned their head slightly to one side, resting it against the wooden back of the chair. The position felt more relaxed. There was no need to move again. The cabin felt complete in its quiet purpose. Rain softened further, now barely more than a gentle mist tapping the roof. The sound of dripping water from the eaves became clearer, slower, more spaced, apart. A final, very distant rumble of thunder rolled across the sky. It was so far away that it almost blended with imagination. Then silence followed. Not complete silence, just the absence of thunder. The traveler listened carefully. The forest now carried only the soft patter of remaining rain and the low hum of the stove. The world had narrowed gently to a small circle of warmth and wood. The traveler's eyelids lowered halfway. The lantern's glow blurred slightly at the edges of vision. Breathing remained steady. The chair no longer creaked. The stove no longer ticked as often. The rain barely tapped. Everything had found a slower pace. The traveler adjusted once more, pulling the chair just a fraction closer to the stove, then letting stillness return. The hands rested comfortably. The shoulders softened further. The night outside continued to stretch quietly across the forest. Inside the cabin, nothing demanded attention. Nothing changed quickly. The rain continued its delicate pattern, thinning toward stillness, and the traveler remained seated beside the lantern and stove, listening as the world gently settled into deeper quiet. The rain did not stop all at once. It loosened its grip slowly, as if deciding to rest between each drop. For a while, there were small clusters of sound against the roof. Then longer pauses. Then only the occasional tap near the chimney, where water still collected before falling. Inside the cabin, the air felt warmer than before, not heavy, just steady. The traveler noticed how the warmth had reached the wooden floorboards. Even through wool socks, there was a faint comfort rising from below. The earlier dampness in the room had completely faded. The lantern's flame had grown smaller again, burning quietly and without movement. The traveler watched it for a long moment. The flame was not perfectly still. It leaned slightly to one side, then corrected itself. It narrowed and widened in tiny adjustments, responding to invisible currents in the air. Outside, a single drop fell from the roof's edge and struck the porch below with a hollow note. Then another. Then silence for several breaths. The forest seemed to hold itself gently, as if listening too. The traveler shifted in the chair, not out of discomfort, but simply to feel the change in position. The back straightened slightly. The shoulders rolled once, slowly, easing the muscles from the earlier walk. A quiet exhale followed. The mind wandered again, this time not to the path, but to the rhythm of the rain that had been constant only moments before. It was strange how quickly the ears adjusted. When the rain was steady, it filled every space. Now, in its absence, the quiet felt larger, but not empty. The cabin itself had a presence. The soft hum of heat inside the stove, the faint crackle as the new piece of wood settled further into embers, the subtle shifting of wood beams cooling in the absence of heavier rain. The traveler leaned forward slightly and rested elbows on knees, hands folded together. The warmth from the stove touched the face more directly now, a soft, even glow across the cheeks. The window showed only darkness beyond. but without the moving patterns of rainfall. The glass was streaked and still. One last droplet slid down its surface and disappeared at the bottom edge. The traveler watched that small movement until it was gone. Outside, the forest began to reveal different sounds. A faint rustle of leaves, freed from the weight of rain. A distant branch adjusting under its own weight. Somewhere far off, the quiet, low call of a nightbird. Soft, brief, then gone again. The traveler sat back once more, allowing the body to sink deeper into the chair. The wood supported the spine evenly. The head rested gently against the back. Breathing slowed further. Inhale, pause, exhale. The stove glowed warmly through its small iron grate. The orange light pulsed softly as embers shifted within. The traveler reached out one hand again, not because of cold, but simply to feel the warmth across the palm. The sensation was even and mild. It required no effort. After a few breaths, the hand returned to rest loosely in the lap. The lantern's oil was gradually lowering. The flame had shortened slightly again, but it remained steady. Shadows grew longer across the floor. The traveler noticed how the corners of the cabin seemed darker now. The space felt more contained, more enclosed in comfort. There was no sense of time passing in minutes, only changes in sound and light. The rain had fully eased now. Only the occasional drop from the trees reached the roof. The forest air beyond the walls felt still. The traveler closed their eyes again. Without the rain, the stove became the primary sound in the room. A gentle, low crackle. A quiet shifting of embers. Each sound separated by long stretches of silence. The breathing grew slower still. The body felt heavier, more supported by the chair. Thoughts appeared briefly. Small images of the forest path earlier. The dim lantern light at the door. But they drifted away easily, like the rain clouds that had moved on. There was nothing to prepare for, no plan to make, only the warmth, only the quiet. After some time, the traveler opened their eyes halfway and glanced toward the stove. The added piece of wood had settled fully now, edges glowing softly. The heat was steady and calm. The lantern flickered once, then steadied again. A faint breeze brushed against the cabin's outer wall. It was gentle, almost uncertain. The structure did not protest. The traveler shifted one final time, letting the body sink fully into the chair. Feet extended slightly farther, hands resting comfortably. The head tilted just enough to feel supported without strain. Outside, the forest resumed its natural nighttime rhythm. A soft rustle here, a distant movement there. The quiet hum of still air among tall trees. Inside, the cabin held its warmth, carefully. The stove glowed. The lantern breathed light. The wooden beams rested overhead. The traveler's breathing matched the pace of the embers. Slow, even, unhurried. The night no longer felt like something passing. It felt like something settled. The last faint drip from the roof fell and did not return. Silence, gentle and wide, spread across the forest and wrapped itself softly around the small wooden cabin. And inside, beside the fading lantern and steady warmth of the stove, the traveler remained still, listening as the quiet deepened into something softer than sound. The quiet did not feel sudden. It arrived gradually, layer by layer, like a blanket laid carefully over the forest. Inside the cabin, the warmth from the stove remained steady, but softer now. The new piece of wood had burned down to a deep orange glow. small lines of red traced along its edges, fading slowly toward ash. The traveler noticed how the light from the stove pulsed gently, almost like breathing, brightening slightly, then dimming, then brightening again. The lantern continued its faint glow, though the flame had grown small and rounded. Its glass chimney carried a thin fog from the warmth inside, meeting the cooler air above. The traveler did not move for a while. There was no need. The body had settled into a shape that felt natural, balanced between warmth and rest. Outside, the forest air seemed clearer after the rain. Through the small window, the darkness looked thinner, not brighter, but more transparent. The clouds had drifted somewhere beyond the treetops, leaving a quiet sky behind. A single branch brushed lightly against the outer wall. It made a soft, slow scraping sound, not sharp, just wood touching wood. The traveler listened to it, then let the sound pass. Breathing continued, slow and even. Inhale, exhale. The chair held steady beneath the traveler's weight. The earlier creaks had stopped. The wood had accepted the position fully. A faint scent of damp earth lingered near the door where shoes rested. It mixed gently with the warm smell of heated timber and faint smoke. The combination was simple, clean, grounded. The traveler let their head tilt slightly forward this time, chin lowering just enough to ease the neck. The position felt comfortable, supported. The stove made a small crack as one of the embers shifted inward. A thin spark flared briefly behind the grate, then disappeared. The cabin responded with a deeper stillness. Without the rain, the space felt larger somehow. The absence of steady tapping created room for silence to expand. The traveler became aware of the space between sounds, the pause after the stove's crackle, the gap between distant forest movements, the softness of breath in an otherwise quiet room. Nothing pressed against the moment. Nothing interrupted it. Time moved without measure. After a while, the traveler slowly extended one leg and then the other, stretching gently. Muscles responded lazily, without resistance. The warmth had softened everything. A quiet exhale followed. The lantern's light flickered once more, smaller than before. Its glow barely reached the far wall now. The traveler watched the flame carefully, noticing how it narrowed and widened in slow cycles. There was no urgency to adjust it. If it dimmed further, the stove would still provide enough light. If it went out entirely, the room would not feel unfamiliar. The cabin had already been memorized by shadow and shape. Outside, a faint clearing in the sky allowed a hint of pale moonlight to filter through the trees. It was subtle, barely visible through the window's streaked glass, but it changed the tone of darkness slightly. The traveler noticed the shift without thinking about it. The night felt calmer now. The earlier thunder seemed distant, almost imagined. The rain had fully moved on. Only the forest remained, breathing softly. The stove's glow lowered another shade. The orange deepened to a richer red. The heat remained, but gentler. The traveler's hands rested loosely, fingers slightly curled. Breathing slowed further. Inhale, pause, exhale. The body felt heavier in the chair, but not uncomfortable, supported, held. The lantern flame finally dipped lower, shrinking to a small, steady point of light. It no longer flickered. It simply remained. The traveler blinked slowly. The edges of the room softened even more. The window now showed faint outlines of tree trunks and the open space between them. The forest floor beyond glistened quietly in moonlight, still damp from the rain. A calm stillness filled every corner of the cabin, no movement required, no thought extended. The stove gave one last gentle crackle as an ember shifted and settled deeper into ash. The traveler listened to that small sound as if it were the closing note of a quiet song. The lantern's flame thinned again. The glow dimmed to the faintest amber. The traveler's breathing matched the rhythm of warmth, fading slowly into steady comfort. Outside, the forest held its calm. Inside, the cabin held its warmth. Nothing more unfolded. Nothing more was needed. The night rested gently around the small wooden structure, and within it, beside the soft red glow of the stove and the nearly silent lantern, the traveler remained still, wrapped in warmth and quiet as the hours drifted without edges. And now, the cabin grows even quieter. The fire has settled, the rain has passed, and the forest is resting. There's nothing more to follow tonight, just this gentle stillness and the steady rhythm of your breathing. Let your body remain heavy. Let your thoughts drift slowly, and allow the calm of this quiet cabin to stay with you as the night continues on.